What is up YouTube? This is Alex aka Foreign. A few weeks ago, Nvidia released the GTX 1080 Ti. Now, first of all, they did release the Founders Edition at the same MSRP as they suggested for all the other retailers, but in my opinion, the Founders Edition is still only worth it in very small cases. For instance, in case where you don't have enough airflow for an open air card to breathe. So that way you can buy a blower style card that will have more dedicated airflow that moves through the card, cooling the components. But today we'll be talking about 20 different models of the GTX 1080 Ti from the add-in board partners, and we'll be talking about Asus, EVGA, Galax, Gigabyte, MSI, Palette, and Zotac cards. Now the information I included here is base and boost clock and memory clock, if the card has a backplate or not, and the price information I found for these cards right now. Now some of these cards aren't even out yet, and some of the cards that you may find in a couple of months on stores like Amazon and Newegg aren't here either. This list is based on the available cards on the 23rd of April 2017, so keep that in mind. Even right now, for some of the cards, there is no price nor clock information available, but I still included them. Concerning Pascal's clock performance, now different vendors put different pre-overclocks on their cards, but as many enthusiasts know, Pascal overclocks itself either way, depending on the cooling solution it uses. Now the better the cooling, the higher the boost clock will be, based on Nvidia's GPU Boost 3.0 technology. For instance, it has been shown that the Aorus cards from Gigabyte, the Extreme Edition and the regular one, boost up to 1900 or even 2000 megahertz all by themselves, even though here it says it's like 1746. But alright, let's start with Asus. They have multiple cards for sale, those being the Asus ROG Strix and the Strix OC models that have the same cooler here, the Turbo OC being their typical blower style reference design, and the Asus Poseidon that isn't out yet but has been basically announced and talked about by Asus. Now concerning the ROG Strix cooler, it is definitely beautiful. In my opinion, it's one of the best looking coolers this generation in general. But the price here is relatively expensive in my opinion. Now, if you are choosing specifically the Strix card, then I'd recommend the $760 one, the non-OC card, because it will basically overclock the same out of the box as the Strix OC model. If you're in the market for a blower style card, then basically if you want to support Asus, or you can find a good deal on a card or get a game with the card or something like that, then the Turbo OC is also a great model. You can get the non-OC for $700 and the OC model for $710. Now we don't know much about Poseidon yet, except for the fact that it's Asus's top tier model. The highest Asus tier cards are called Poseidon, and they always bring something new to the table. This one brings in integrated custom water cooling support. The heatsink is designed specifically to accommodate both air cooling and water cooling. It will probably cost around $800, and it's a very specific use case scenario. Now concerning EVGA cards, EVGA has multiple cards, but information is currently available about these three ones. So the EVGA Superclocked 2 Gaming for $720, and the EVGA SC Black Edition for $720. These are basically the same cooler, only difference is the color design. But what's most interesting from EVGA is the FTW3 or For the Win 3 card for $750. This is EVGA's first triple fan cooling design in recent years as far as I know, and this was prompted by the problematic cooling of cards that launched from EVGA in the 10 series. Some of those cards had bad capacitors on the PCBs, which means that these capacitors could actually combust while the card was in your case, which is sometimes also called exploding. And those cards were problematic in many regards. After the issue was brought forward, I myself stopped recommending EVGA cards. But now, especially considering their top-notch customer support, the EVGA FTW3 would actually be a very good card to recommend. but maybe if you can find a deal on this one, then it'd be better, because we'll talk about Gigabyte's offerings very soon. Galax has been very prominent in the top tier card designs with their Hall of Fame cards, which was recently announced literally a week ago or so. And there is no official information on it yet as far as I know, but some photos of the cards have been leaked online. Now the XOC is your typical dual fan design. The heatsink is pretty long, so you'll be fine in terms of cooling. If the card is on a good deal or you can find it cheaper or whatever, then it's a great buy. But the Hall of Fame will probably cost around $800 plus minus 10 to 20, but it is literally one of the best looking and best performing coolers of the recent years, both on the GTX 980, the 980 Ti, the 1080 and the 1080 Ti. All of these cards with the Hall of Fame cooler performed exceptionally well. So if you want the best of the best, then the Hall of Fame would be my go-to card. Gigabyte's offerings are always very compelling, and in my opinion, this is their best showing yet. Gigabyte has 3 cards this time. The typical free fan design, the Gigabyte Gaming OC for $700, which is basically the 1080 Ti's MSRP, with the $700 being a very attractive price for a cooler with such a decent looking radiator under here and 3 fans. $700 seems like a steal. But the best bang for the buck cooler in my opinion would be the Gigabyte Aorus non-extreme card. It is almost a triple slot cooler, more like 2.5. It has 3 stacking fans here. On the GTX 1080, this was the best performing cooler, but it was also the biggest and one of the more expensive ones. This time with the GTX 1080 Ti, Gigabyte Aorus decided to raise the MSRP only by $20 and allowing people to get this extremely massive cooler, which in my opinion, if you want the coolest and the quietest card, is the best choice right here for the offered price right now. The Overclocked Edition, so to say, is the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme Edition for $750. It uses the same basic radiator as on the Gigabyte Aorus, but the different thing is the backplate here. It has an illuminated Aorus logo and a bigger copper heatsink for the backside of the GPU. If you really like this backplate, or if you can find it cheaper, then this is also an option, but in my opinion, this is literally the best value GTX 1080 Ti on the market right now. But still, let's talk about the other cards, because there are some interesting things here as well. Now, Msi Seahawk is the all-in-one water cooling design MSI does together with Corsair, and I think it started with the GTX 980 Ti, but now with the 1080 Ti, they're doing a great job again. Of course, the price is pretty steep in my opinion, but you should keep in mind that this is an all-in-one cooler design and it's a water-cooled card. So that means that your temperatures will be probably hovering around the 50s to 60s, even under the highest load. Unlike the Gigabyte Aorus card for $720, this one isn't as heavy, so it won't sag as much in your case. MSI's air-cooled flagship is the Msi Gaming X for $750. It's also a beefier 2.5 slot design. Cools very well, but in my opinion, the red and black should go away. I don't think it fits all of the cases. It basically only fits the red and black theme if you're going for that. Same with the MSI Aero here that uses the green accents. In my opinion, it should either be RGB if you're that kind of person, or white, or just black. Just a monochromous color that would fit with all the others, like the armor for instance. Considering the armor for $700, it's actually a decent offering because it's an open air cooler, even though as we can see the heatsink here is quite tiny, so be prepared for this card to run close to the 80s, but for $700 at MSRP it will probably perform a little better than any other blower designs that you can find for $700. Of course, Gigabyte's $700 triple fan card will probably perform better in terms of cooling and noise than the MSI Armor one. Now, palette is actually a very interesting topic as well. The Game Rock Premium, as you can see here, I couldn't find the prices or anything, but this is a very interesting card because it uses 4 fans. This fan has another one under it, and this one has another one under it as well. So this means that The fans that are closer to the radiator spin in one direction, pushing air onto the radiator, and the fans on top of these fans, the ones that we can see here, push air also down. The air is pushed more forcefully onto the radiator through these quad fans, I guess. That would in theory mean much better cooling of the GPU and the PCB in general. Now, I'm still to see this card tested, and it would be really cool if somebody actually got their hands on this and did a teardown and the testing. We can't know for sure how it performs, but it's very nice to see innovation in the GPU cooling designs. The Super Jetstream is your typical dual fan design. The radiator is fairly chunky, as we can see here, and the dual fans will blow cold air on top of the radiator, cooling the graphics card's components and the GPU. If you can find this card cheaper than the others, if you like the design, then it's a decent buy. And finally, let's talk about Zotac. The Amp Extreme card here for 760 and the Zotac Amp Edition for 740. Zotac is known for making very big coolers, starting I think from the 900 series or maybe even the 700 series. Their Amp Extreme cooler was 2.5 to 3 slots big and having 3 fans. That also makes this card one of the coolest this generation. Even on the 980 Ti and the 1080, the Amp Extreme cooler is, though big and will cause severe sag in your system, it will still cool the GPU very well and stay quiet and doing that. The Zotac Amp Edition is your typical dual fan with a decent radiator that will cool the GPU. We've talked about most of these cards. You can compare the coolers yourselves. Most of these will perform within 5 degrees of each other, except for the reference blower style coolers, but the highest tier coolers will perform better in terms of cooling, noise, and overclocking. The best card, in my opinion, right now, as of April 23rd, 2017, for the money is the Gigabyte GeForce GTX 1080 Ti Aorus Non-Extreme Edition, so the regular Aorus, for $720. If you're in the market for a 1080 Ti and you can deal with the graphics card sagging in your system, then this card would be my best recommendation right now. If you're in the market for the best 1080 Ti ever made, then the Galax GTX 1080 Ti Hall of Fame would be the one that I would choose. Now, do keep in mind, right now EVGA hasn't officially announced the Kingpin card, which is bound to overclock very well as well. So if a Kingpin is announced at some point and released, then it may pose some serious threat to the Hall of Fame card. All the other cards are more of a subjective opinion. If you like it and you can find a good deal on it, then you should definitely get what you want most. But this spreadsheet is made to compare most of what's available on the market right now, and the Aorus card for 720 would be my #1 choice. If you have any questions or suggestions, make sure to leave them in the comments section below. I'll try to reply to every single one. If you like this video, make sure to like it, and if you didn't like it, leave a dislike and tell me why didn't you like it. If you enjoy this kind of content, then maybe consider subscribing. I will also leave links to all the graphics cards and other relevant information in the description below. I thank you for your attention and hope to see you later.